How can vulnerability and boundaries coexist to be the secret sauce that helps energize your team and move you forward to achieve awesome results? My name is Megan, and I've led marketing teams from startups to Fortune 100 companies through adversity and change to deliver powerhouse results, and I'm going to share with you what I've learned. Stick around to the end where I'll share specific tactics you can use in your vulnerability practice to get started today while being totally professional. Vulnerability, as we define it here, is showing up as a human who makes mistakes and sharing your lessons from your own growth journey with your team to enable them and move them forward. It's important to note that vulnerability in this context does not mean bearing every single detail or sharing something incredibly personal or becoming overly emotional. The key to vulnerability at work is relevance. What's the so what for why are you sharing this with your team? What lessons are you imparting? Will this story help your team grow or connect or learn in an important way? While vulnerability may seem counterintuitive to a workplace where strength and competition are often emphasized, it can actually have several positive impacts on individuals and teams and be that secret sauce that I mentioned. So we'll talk about two positive impacts of vulnerability here that really lead to those awesome results. The first is innovation and creativity. Vulnerability allows your team to express themselves, to come to the group with all of their ideas, challenge the status quo, and share their innovative solutions without the fear of judgment or rejection. When team members feel psychologically safe to share this with each other, you are far more likely to see the results of a collaborative work environment. This can lead to increased innovation and problem solving throughout your organization. The second benefit of vulnerability is learning and growth. Embracing vulnerability allows professionals to acknowledge their limitations and their knowledge gaps and seek feedback and opportunities for growth in those areas. And we all know that having a growth mindset on your team and creating a culture of continuous learning is going to push all of your goals forward and allow your team to achieve their results while moving their own careers forward as well. One of the comments that stood out to me in a feedback session with someone on my team is when she remarked on the balance between vulnerability and the ability to be firm and have high expectations. And something happens when you become more vulnerable, right? People around you become more vulnerable too. And if you put that into practice with your team and you have 15 minutes of fame, sort of spotlight, highlight sessions of someone, it can be really difficult to 2 days later have a performance conversation with someone. But I'll remind you that having high expectations and providing the coaching and feedback necessary for your team in order for them to achieve your expectations is a kindness that helps move them forward. It's not a bad thing to talk through disappointing results with someone. It's only a bad thing if it's a surprise. So the more that you talk about your expectations and the more that your team talks about the expectations that they have and where they are with their work, the better you all will be equipped to identify where you need to tweak some ideas or processes or where you need to rework something entirely. Is this a everybody wins, happily ever after scenario? No, of course not. Difficult conversations are always going to happen. But if you're transparent with your team about where you are in your own journey and where they are, you'll all have more information that will enable those conversations to be expected and be really productive. Then you can hold to your high expectations without sacrificing learning moments and pivoting moments along the way. So as promised, here are some tips for how you can incorporate vulnerability into your practice today in a totally professional way. So the first is a 15 minutes of fame exercise. This is essentially the first 15 minutes of your team meeting. Somebody will stand up and share a little bit of information about themselves. It can be really within whatever boundaries they set. So totally professional story. This is where I went to college. This is what I did. Here's what I do. Or you can put in some personal information as well. So I suggest if you're going to start this, you go first and share a little bit more information than you're used to sharing. Again, it doesn't have to be oversharing. There should be relevance to why you're talking about a particular story. But if you share a few things that you don't find typically on your LinkedIn profile, you'll start to model the behavior of this is a safe place to share more information than we typically do. The second is to just tell your team that you've set a personal goal to become more authentic or more vulnerable in your leadership practice and ask for feedback along the way. Third, this is a really easy one to say and a really hard one to do, but admit when you're wrong, admit your mistakes, and highlight where you've learned things that your team can help with. Where have you overcome challenges? Or more importantly, where have you not overcome challenges? And what did you learn from that they can take within a specific project or program that you all are working on right now? Once you've got this vulnerability journey going a little bit and somebody shares a vulnerable moment with you, respond to that vulnerability with curiosity and thank them for sharing. So thank you very much for sharing this with me, or thanks for trusting me with this. I really appreciate it. I'm curious, what's the one piece of information that you want me to take away with this? And the last piece is share personal stories as it relates to your team, and make sure that you have the what's the so what of why you're sharing this with them and what they can take from it. So remember, vulnerability can work within any leadership style, and it doesn't have to be a totally behind the scenes look at your personal life. It can be within strict professional boundaries and be very relevant to your team. I promise you, the more vulnerable and open you are with your team, the more open they'll be with you. And that just helps everybody grow and achieve great results. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear about your experience with vulnerability in the comments below. And please subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of this video, where we'll be digging into authenticity and how you can show up as your whole self at work in a way that really resonates with your team.